Thank you, Uri. Let me just, because we are the change, you want to explain the change? You explain the change, okay? I'll just present Richard Hunter, a former North Londoner, has been appointed Chief Operating Officer of Shufersal, Israel's largest retail chain with 230 supermarkets. He joined from sister company Netvision, a communications provider where he had been CEO since 2007. He served 10 years in the IDF Intelligence Corps while also gaining a law degree from the College of Management. You should have done it from Tel Aviv University. Okay. It's a good place anyway. Mr. Hunter took an MBA at NCAD, which is certainly a very good place in France, and after graduating began working for the international consulting firm McKinsey & Company. In 2006, he became Deputy CEO at Netvision. As the company's Deputy CEO, he managed to increase the profits by 30% and the performance by 0.5% when most OECD countries were contracting. I'm very happy to have you here, and you're invited. Thank you.
Just as far as results, as I'm sure all of you have got a background in business, so you can see our sales at the top over the last 6 years have gone up by 78%. Operating profit has gone up significantly, but that's only because a few years ago the company nearly went bankrupt, or didn't nearly go bankrupt, but didn't make a lot of money, and actually 1 year we made a loss. As far as net profit, you can see our results. One of the interesting things in supermarkets, although we have about 11.5 billion shekels turnover, our operating profit is 4.5%. Which is good compared to some retailers, but it's only 4.5%. It's not mobile operators, and not banks, not insurance companies. And our net profit is 2.2%, which means that although people like hating the big guy, we have turnover of 11.5 billion. Out of that, 73% of those revenues are money that you pay us and we give directly to suppliers for the goods. Another 11% we give directly to workers in the branch, 6% or 6 to 8% for rent, etc., 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 etc. Out of all of our personnel costs, over 95% are in the branches. So if I've seen in many debates, people say, why don't you just get rid of all the headquarters, then you'll be lean and mean. Even if we got rid of all the headquarters, including myself, we could reduce the prices by 0.3%. That's the 0.3%, not 3%. So it's a very, by the way, all around the world, retail is a low-margin business, lots of moving parts. Lucky for people that bought our shares 7 or 8 years ago, the company's gone up by about 300% over the last 7 years and also distributed dividends of over 1.5 billion shekels. 2.2 billion shekels. Just international benchmarks so you get to know. I don't know if, does anyone here work in the retail field? That means I can make up anything I want. If you look at our operating profit, so operating profit's about 4.5%, much better than our direct competitor, who's Blue Square. But the truth is, there are still lots and lots of players in the world, and also in Israel, that have higher operating profit. Tesco, Walmart, Deleuze is in Belgium, and also some of the private discounters in Israel have higher operating profit. But in general, quite good. If you look at our stock performance, like any good CEO, I should start by talking about stock performance. So this is from 2003. This is when the ownership of IDB was taken over. By the way, I feel very honored. Recanati, who I think was one of the key donors of this building, used to be the owner of IDB and was one of the people that helped grow Shufersal. So I feel as if I'm continuing his legacy. If you look at what's happened from 2003, you can see that Shufersal's share value has gone up by 218. That's the top 100 companies listed TAS 100, and that's our competitor. You can see that people are less happy with their performance. Okay, what's happened over... I was told to talk for about 10 to 12 minutes and then open up for discussion. Is that still correct? That's been about 3 minutes, so I'll talk quickly. What's happened over the last few years, and how does a retailer, although for most of us as customers, when you go into a supermarket, it seems really simple, right? Buy products, put them on a shelf, and sell them to customers. What can be easier? There are 15,000 products. We have 260 stores, 4 different formats, a loyalty club, credit card. Prices of each product are important for each of us. Marketing, etc., 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 etc. Lots and lots of things. Service, computers, logistics. Israel's rather hot, so if you want to take cucumbers from a field in Beersheba and put them on the shelf, you think it's easy. If they can do it in Tesco, where they have to import it from Israel, on a boat or by plane, it should be easy in Israel. But because of the temperatures in Israel, actually sometimes it's harder than getting it from the same field all the way to London. So what have we done over the last 7 years? If you look at 2003 to 2005, this is the beginning of the turnaround. At the same time, Shufersal's operating profit was 1.4%, which isn't very good. Like for like, which means existing stores that we had last year, what happened to the sales were negative, which means we had a problem with the stores. Less people were coming this year than the year before. What we started is, for those of you who actually was in Israel 7 years ago? Oh, everyone, okay. Well, nearly everyone. So if you remember, we used to have 8 different names on our supermarkets. Machzanei Mazon, Cosmos, Lemahadrin, all different types of banners, and most of them didn't have the name Shufersal on them. There were a few, the old stores had Shufersal, everyone else had a different banner. We had a private label called Superclass. I don't know if any of you remember. The loyalty card, our internet site was called Netzal. We didn't have a credit card, so we had no brand. And the first thing we did is actually decide to create a brand, which at the time was very scary, and convert all of the stores to a name, which is Shufersal. We decided to change the loyalty card to Shufersal. You'll see here over the years, in 2006 to 2007 we merged. The third player in the retail market went bankrupt. The reason why they went bankrupt is what I said before. In supermarkets, your operating profit, if you're good, is 4. Your net profit, if you're good, is 2.2. All you have to do is have sales go down by 3% and you're losing money. Right? Most of your costs are fixed, at least your rent, your employees, your headquarters. And therefore, if you don't manage it well, you can be in deep trouble. Many, many retailers around the world have gone bankrupt. In Israel, what actually happened to Club Market is because they were losing sales, they thought they'd take their neighborhood stores, all of the stores that are close to home, and cut the prices by 15%. And they said, if we cut the prices by 15%, people won't have to go to the big stores, they'll come to the small stores. Sales will increase and we'll make lots of money. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because small stores can't grow by 100%. If beforehand they made a 30% margin, now they make a 15% margin, their sales have to double. They didn't. They went bankrupt. By the way, a number of players have tried this around the world. They've all gone bankrupt. 3 years ago, our competitor had another great idea. They thought they'd take the neighborhood stores called Mega Bail, cut the prices by 15%. I don't know if this sounds familiar, because Club Market tried it 5 years before. And they thought that if they did this, sales would increase and they'd make all of these stores profitable. What happened after 3 months is that none of the stores were profitable. Most of them actually started losing significant amounts of money. And after 3 months, they increased the prices again 15%, back to their starting point. Okay, anyway, so after we merged with Club Market, we started a program on strengthening our branch managers. We moved, in the old days, you don't know this, but if you're in America or in England or France, when you go into a supermarket, the person that puts the products on the supermarket shelf is a supermarket employee. In Israel, until a year ago, the person that put the product on the shelf was Osem Tnuva with the supplies employees, which means that if you were in a store and you were next to a shelf and you went up to a worker and said, excuse me, could you tell me where the cottage cheese is? This cottage cheese is hot. The worker would look at you and say, sorry, I don't work for Shufersal, I work for Osem. Or if you went to another part in the store and there was dirt on the floor and you said, could you help clean that up? He says, he would tell you to get lost because he doesn't work in the supermarket. That doesn't make any sense. Also, it's totally inefficient. We had people, for example, you can get someone from Strauss who would come in the shop for 2 hours in the morning. If the shelf was empty at 6 o'clock in the evening, it was the customer's problem because we didn't have any employees to replenish the shelves. They kept the stock in the back room, but there was no stock at 6 o'clock in the evening. So we decided 2 years ago that if it works in every other country in the world, there's no reason why it shouldn't work in Israel. Decided to replenish. It was a very complicated process. Luckily for us, it worked. We launched a Shufersal credit card, and we did lots of other things. That was until last year, actually till 2 years ago. What I wanted to talk to you about today is, all of that sounds good, but they asked me to talk about what happens when you have problems. How do you deal with issues around brand? And so what I wanted to talk about is that we realized, I joined the company a year and a half ago, and when I came in, what I realized is that although Shufersal is a great company and lots of people like it, when I conducted focus groups, saw research, although there are lots of things to improve in general, as I said, much, much better than it was eight or 9 years ago. We saw two things. The first thing is when you look at the sales, which is probably the most important thing in supermarkets, if you don't increase your sales, nothing will happen. I saw that if you look at H1 versus H2, H1 2009, if you look at each of the H's, you compare it to the previous year, you can see that we weren't growing, our sales weren't growing. They were growing by 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 1%. In general, retailers that don't grow don't have any future. Now, it's fine for 2 or 3 years not to grow. Not every company, sure all of you have learned, you don't grow forever. And in retail, you don't grow by more than 3, 4, 5, 6%. But if you don't grow, and all other expenses go up slowly every year, which they do, employee cost, rental cost, electricity, etc., etc., if you don't grow your top line, you're in deep trouble. one of the biggest problems we found is, I don't know if you remember, we used to have a format called Big. Big were our hypermarkets. And what actually happened is when I looked at all this, for example, if you took 2010, I saw that all the supermarkets had grown by 0.8. Our other stores had grown by 1.3, but our 32 hypermarkets called Big had gone down by 2%, which was very bad. When we actually dug deeper, what we found is their market share, in 2007, the big stores, these 32 stores, were 7.6% of all of the food retailers. They'd gone down to 6.8%, and when we drove deeper, we saw that we were losing about 8% of our customer base every year, which means customers were telling us, listen guys, something's wrong with the format. For those of you that didn't know, we had three types of stores. We had a neighborhood store called Shufersal Sheli. We had hypermarkets, which were supposed to be great service, large range, something like a Tesco in the UK. We had 32 stores of those. And then we had the rest with Shufersal Deal, something which we created 7 years ago, which I'll talk about in a minute. And what customers said to us is, listen, we like Deal, we like Sheli, we don't like Big. Now that's very hard. Just came into a company. Customers are saying that. Obviously, my predecessor and the other people in the company thought that Big was a good idea, but I didn't. And by the way, one other thing which is important, if in 2007, if you look at all the stores in Israel, 39.6% were discount stores. So like Shufersal, like Megabu, like Rami Levi, and not Bitan, Chetzichiram, these are discounters in Israel. 2010, nearly 55% of all sales in Israel were discount. And by the way, if you just look at this neighborhood in Haifa, you can see in a very, very small area, there are 2 Rami Levis, an Osherad, Kimat China, all of the discounters. And by the way, this is the same in nearly every town in Israel. So when we took all of this together, I told the management, listen, we have a format that customers are saying don't like. Customers are leaving. Israel's gone to discount. By the way, this already happened 5 years ago. It's just becoming more and more extreme. So Israelis either want something close to the house, which is convenient, which gives excellent service, or they want something bigger, also that gives service, but is much cheaper. Just an example. This is one of the things. Obviously, when you conduct change, one of the most important things in a company is actually to convince your managers and people that work with you that this change is important. Because just think, there was a big format manager, 32 stores, that believed that Big was the solution. A VP of marketing thought it was a great idea. Finance manager, lots and lots of people thought this was good. So it was very important to show them that logically and also emotionally we had to do this. And when we showed these types of charts, and we saw, for example, Big Poleg, which is just outside Netanya, a great store which I know very much. I checked this morning how much it did compared to last year. The store sales are up 35%. Now, if you look at this, last year they were going down by between 5 to 10% a year because Big had expensive prices with lots of promotions, good service, good range, good store. And what we did is we cut the number of promotions by about 60%. So instead of having 1,000 items on promotion at any given time, there are now about 300. But we reduced the shelf price by 15%. We reduced it from Big to Deal. Now, Deal has a few hundred promotions, but not thousands. We also slightly reduced the range to focus on the product that people want. So they want bigger, for example, 8-pack of Diet Coke and not 6. Okay, well, I'm just going to carry on with this. This situation that we found wasn't unique to Israel. Anywhere around the world, something called hypermarkets, Casino, Carrefour, Real, are under exactly the same situation. You have discounters in Europe. There are no Rami Levis, you're not Bitan, but they do have Aldi, Lidl, and other players. They're squeezing you on price. And on the other side, if you look at, there are specialties. In the old days, hypermarkets used to sell. We sell in our bigs TVs. We're the second largest seller of TVs in Israel. Washing machines, whatever you want. And food, and clothes, and houseware. Now what happened is, in many times, these players historically weren't cheap enough. So they were being squeezed on price by these food players. And they were being squeezed also by specialty players that also had very, very deep prices. And also they were experts on specific categories. Anyway, as a result of all of that, I had to try and create a new program which stimulated growth in the company, because, as I said, that for me was the most important thing. Growing companies, and we've set as you saw, if we were growing by 0.8%, our target is to grow, we hope, by above 5% this year, and I hope that will happen the following year also. Q1, what was very nice is that all the 3 quarters of last year we grew by less than 0.6%. Q4 we grew by 1.8%, which was very positive. This first quarter, because Pesach, because of seasonality, adjusting for seasonality, we grew by 5%. And I can't tell you my results, although we're finishing the quarter today. All of it's nominal. But everything I've showed before is all nominal. and you're right that inflation has an impact. But what actually happens is, although inflation, based on government figures, is 4.2%, in food, we reported at the end of first quarter that inflation in our stores was 1%. The reason is we had 32 stores that we cut the prices by 15%. We introduced promotions, and because of the competition, everyone's become very aggressive. For example, today we're selling chickens, 5 kilos for 70 shekels. They probably cost us 100 shekels to buy. Now, by the way, there are other products we make money on, don't worry. But there are lots and lots of things you do, and the competition is getting more and more aggressive. Because of that, I wanted to create a very clear program for all of the company managers and our 12,000 employees to try and create this change, which obviously starts in brand, and I'll talk about the brand, but is I think, much wider than that. The first thing is we need to open stores. Over the last number of years, we hadn't opened stores. That was one of the reasons why we were losing market share and losing sales. All of the discounters were opening stores all around us, and we weren't opening stores at all. We declared a target of 100,000 meters. I'm glad to say we've already signed 70,000 meters, and we've opened about 30. And what's surprising is, although we're big, we have 22% of all food that Israelis buy in Israel. It's only 22%. And more importantly, there are lots of places we don't have stores. We opened a store in Malel Dumim. We don't have any store in Bat Yam. 200-something thousand people. We have no discount stores. We're going to open 2 there. We don't have a store in Kisar. So there are more and more places we're opening. We opened a new store in Kfar Saba, I think 3 months ago, and our overall sales in Kfar Saba have grown by 50%. And we're more than happy to compete with everyone. I opened in Malel Dumim a store right next to Rami Levy. I believe that at the end, when people go to both and they see the price is the same and our service is better, then they stay with us. But obviously, in retail, which is very different to other industries, you can choose. A customer can go in his car and turn left or right, which, by the way, means that brand is very important. Service is important, pricing is important, and branding is important. So the first thing was to open 100,000 meters. The second one was I decided to kill a brand. Now, for those of you, any of you guys branding managers or worked with marketing before? A few. Killing a brand is one of the hardest things to do. As I said, everyone loves it. You come into a company. Now, by the way, I never liked big. I used to be a consultant for Shufersal, and I, from the very beginning, said I don't like it. Then I was a consultant. Now that I'm in charge, it makes it easier to decide. But when I showed you the figures I showed you, I think everyone slowly understood. It took us about 5 months. It's a process of discussion and advantages and disadvantages. But this was probably the most important thing. Our average big store that we converted to deal in December is up by more than 15%. So although we cut the prices by 15%, sales are up by 15%, which means in volume sales have gone up by 30%, right? Because we cut prices by 15%, which is very, very positive. Customers are growing, and so far we're extremely happy with this move. Obviously, we've just started. It's 7 months to launch, so we'll only be able to see at the end of the year or the end of next year. We then decided to start opening. We don't have any solution for health. I don't know if any of you have been to Eden Seven Market in Israel or Whole Foods in America. Obviously, a huge trend, and we were totally out of it. I came into the stores, nothing healthy, nothing that I thought was, I call it health and indulgence. And I saw that my competitor had bought a player called Eden Seven Market. I think the stores look amazing, very expensive. By the way, that's already changed, not in their stores, but in our stores. And I personally don't believe in a standalone 2,000-meter store for health and indulgence. I think all of us want to eat healthy, but at the same time, we also want to buy potentially a bottle of Coke or maybe crisps. So what we wanted to do is create within your shopping visit an area of health and indulgence. We call it green. And to do that, actually, we decided to buy a player called Organic Market, which was the second largest player in Israel. They only had 8 stores. Luckily, we went through a long process of convincing our board, which wasn't easy, and then getting approval by the Memoneh Legbenimei Skim, who's the competition authority. We got approval 10 days ago, and we're now starting to roll out. We'll have 50 of these green sections in our stores, and we guarantee to be, we're going back to brand, at least 15% cheaper than Eden Seven Market. Now, this is important. Branding, you can give any branding promise you want. You need to make sure you have structural reasons for doing it. The reason why I can give a promise like that is Eden Seven Market has a standalone store. He has rent, employees, etc., etc. He's got to make some profit on the product. When I take an existing store, the first one was in Ra'anana, where I live. I do most of the pilots close to my home, so I can pop in there at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. When we started, we didn't take one product out of the supermarket. We freed up 87 meters, built this green section, which cost us 500,000 shekels, and we introduced 2,000 new products. All the kupayot, all the people that work at the tills, worked at the tills. The rent was the same, the electricity is the same. The only difference is we need 2 people to give service, because to sell organic and health, you need to give service. So those are my costs. I've got the cost of products. Now, when I compete with organic, that has to pay the rent back, and there's no way he can win, which is why I can guarantee that I'll be cheaper than him by at least 15%, and that's what we're doing. Originally, when we launched the green concept, they said that it was a bad strategy, and we shouldn't create a sub-brand, we shouldn't create these big stores. I'm glad to say that we started this pilot 7 months ago. Last week, the CEO of Blue Square said that they're going to start opening. Before we went on this green strategy, they said they're going to open stores within Mega of 500 meters. They opened 2, one in Ranana and one in Modi'in, with 22 workers in each. And I said, I still don't understand. You can't make money with 500 meters, 22 workers. You won't make money on the sales. And in the end, every business has to make money. It doesn't have to make a lot of money, but it has to make some money. And they said, when we opened our first branch of 87 meters, they said, it's way too small, it won't work. We've now got 7. As I said, we're going to open 50 within the next 2 years. Last week, the CEO of Blue Square, to one of the newspapers, when he was interviewed, said that the next store they're opening is going to be 150 meters, and they now think that the optimal store is between 150 to 200, which probably means that we're correct. I must admit that it's still early days. When we've got 30, we'll be able to see. But customers are very ecstatic. We got the most frequent request we have on our Facebook page is, when are we going to open a green in Beersheba, Ashdod? We are, by the way, in the big next to our canyon. So we are opening one there. We're opening the next 2. One is in Dil Tel Aviv, and there's another one in Haifa. But we're opening out lots. We couldn't open until we got the approval of the competition committee. The last thing, and I've only got 2 more slides, we have 100 stores. I don't know if you've ever seen, we don't have now. Now we have 19 Shufersal Expresses. Shufersal Express is a store up to 150 meters. Has anyone been to London the last 5 years? Right, there are about 3,000, there are 1,200 Tesco Expresses spread across the UK. There are about 800 Sainsbury's locals. If you've been to France, Carrefour's got it. Small stores. In Israel, they're makolot. There are about 7,000 of these mini markets. Unfortunately, most of these stores in Israel are very, very old, have very limited range, are very expensive, don't have computer systems, so many times there are lots of problems with pricing, lots of problems with the shelf dates, because they don't have their own supply chain, they're dependent on Osem or Tnuva, but they give excellent service. Normally, most of the places, the guys that work there are amazing. I've got a mini market right at the end of my street. The guy that manages is a guy called Ofer, he's fantastic. Really fantastic. We go there, we've got an account, we write down what we want. By the way, I buy most of my stuff at Shufersal, but every now and then when we need some eggs, there's someone who lives at the bottom of the road. What's happened in most worlds, in most places, is these players don't have enough money to improve their stores. They'd like to, but they don't. So what we're doing is we're going to these individual operators that have good stores, and we're saying, for example, to this guy in Ranana, would you like to work for us? They normally say no, and then when we tell them the terms, they suddenly say yes. And what we do is we say, listen, first of all, we'll renovate the store totally. So we'll turn the store into something that looks like a very modern store in England and New York. That's number 1. Number 2, we'll guarantee you a minimum salary. I won't get into the figures, but it's normally about what they make now. So they're guaranteed that they'll get the same amounts of revenue as they get now. We then tell them that we'll give them the computer system, we'll set the pricing, we'll give them logistics. All they have to do is serve customers, which is what they like anyway. Technical support for this store costs nothing. We've got 260 stores. The additional store, the incremental cost is nothing. They have to sign an agreement with a computer company. And the third thing is, which is the most important, the average express store that used to be in a mini market doubles when we convert it to Shufersal Express. We had one in Bavli. I don't know if anyone's been to Bavli. An amazing store. Sold 52,000 shekels. And the same guy's working there before. On the 52,000 shekels, he used to make 8,500 shekels. 52,000 shekels a week. He'd make about 8,500 shekels a month net after paying salaries, rent, etc. The store now is doing just under 100,000 shekels a week. And I'll tell you why. We've got double the number of products. They're cheaper. The store looks amazing. Well, at least I think it looks amazing. Go and have a look. And now what's happening is actually the guy is earning double. So, and unfortunately, this, anyway, it doesn't matter the story, but I'll tell you afterwards if anyone's interested. He joined us, he did a great job, and then he went down to Eilat, jumped into the sea, smashed his head on a stone, and is paralysed. So his father's managing the store. But he's an amazing guy, an amazing store. We have 17 of these, we're going to get to 100. The last thing is we have something called Shufersal Direct. We're launching a new website in a month. And again, the idea is our current website is very functional, but it really isn't attractive at all. It's not. Now, with the leading website, we sell 3 times more than Mega, but it's not good enough. We've been working on it from the day I came into the company for a year and a half. It's not easy to totally, you'll see, the website is I think, the best in the world. No, I would say that. But what's nice about the internet, which is very different to food, you can look at every website in the world and you can say to a bunch of people from Microsoft, I want that, and that. So we took the best from Tesco, from Carrefour, from whoever we saw, everything that we thought was good, we checked it in focus groups. Now the only thing that's left is to make sure the customers like it. And by the way, they don't always like what you want. Okay, so that in general, that's what I want to say. The challenge we had is what to do with the big format. I think I've told you what we did. We converted the stores. We launched a TV campaign that explained the 14 new stores with Shufersal deal in. All of these were converted from big to deal. These are just the areas. Just two examples. We had a store in Rishon. We converted it from big to deal. As I said, customers liked it. Sales went up by 50%. Another store in Herzliya, 25. I can now tell you the Herzliya is over 50%. Over 50%. Afula, we did the same. We're about 70. Now, I wish all my stores would go up 70%. They don't, unfortunately. Obviously, I'm showing you the best ones. Some of them haven't reacted. We had a big in Azrieli, in just below. Nothing's happened. I'll tell you what's happened. Our profits have gone down significantly because we cut prices a lot, and we're selling the same amount of money, just at much lower prices. So it's not all great, but the average is still very positive. We're not the only player that's done this. I don't know if I'm supposed to open up for questions, but I think just one thing that's important. When you go through change, and I did the same in Netvision, I did it when I was a consultant many years, the first thing you always need to understand in any business is branding is important, but first of all, the most important thing is the economics, the underlying economics. Your business has to make money. You can have the best brand in the world. If you don't make money, it won't last forever. Having said that, it's not enough just to have a good business, because branding is very important, which is why lots of us spend lots of money on TV advertising. When you want to make a change, as I said, the first thing is to understand what business change you want to make. And then when you start thinking about changing branding, before you start talking to your customers, you need to convince the people in your own organization. So I hope what you saw is, once I realized that we had a problem with big, one of the solutions could have been, let's just change the brand. So let me call it, instead of big, I'll call it Richie's or Carrefour or something else. But when we dug deeper, we found the problem wasn't with the brand. Okay, because sometimes I've worked with lots of companies where you do the analysis and you see, guess what? The product's fantastic, just the brand shit, which can happen. In this case, we found that the brand wasn't great, but when we conducted focus groups and we spoke to customers, I went to stores, we could see that people weren't happy with the format. They weren't happy with the prices. So the trade-off between quality and price wasn't good enough. Once we decided to make the change, then there's a lot of convincing internally, a lot of discussions. It's very important to hear what people say. After we did this, I called in all the branch managers, all the 32 branch managers. So before we had a press conference at 8:30 in a branch in Herzliya. It was very important. They wanted me to do it in some fancy place in Tel Aviv. I said, no, we're doing it in a branch in Herzliya, an old big branch, so I could talk to them about the supermarket. But before I told the journalists our new story, I brought the 32 store managers, all of them, and I presented to them, plus all of my regional managers, the strategy, which had the 5-step strategy, but a focus on big, because that's what we declared. Some of them were very nervous. Some of them told me, one of them told me that I'm an idiot, it won't work. He was much nicer because he was scared for his job. But he was he said it won't work. He said, listen, if we cut prices, all the stores are going to lose money, which is exactly what happened to Mega Bayer and a few other stores, and then we'll increase the prices over time. I think that luckily, so far, the first 7 months have been very positive, and as long as all of you carry on shopping at Shufersal, it will still be positive. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, you need to think of your workers way before you talk to anyone else. Big organizations need to get everyone on board internally, and then you can start talking to your customers. The last thing you want is customers to come into the store, and let's say half the store doesn't understand what's happening with the brand, doesn't understand what you're doing, you'll fail. Customers will ask the cashier, says, what's the name of the store? Why did you reduce the price? And if the cashier doesn't know what happened and can't say, listen, we cut the prices, customers will get very muddled. Positive is what customers want, not negative the whole time. Sorry, I apologize, it was quick.